At 8:10 a.m. on August 6, 1945, a man walked through Hiroshima, believing the most important decision of his day was whether he had time to catch the train home. The sky was clear, the air was calm, and the city moved with the quiet confidence of routine. People went to work. Streetcars ran on schedule. Nothing hinted that history was already counting down the final minutes of an entire world. The man was 29 years old, a naval engineer on a temporary assignment, thinking about his wife, thinking about the infant son he had never held, thinking about tomorrow because tomorrow was supposed to exist. In less than 5 minutes, Hiroshima would cease to be a city. It would become a before and after marker for human civilization. But right now, none of that was visible. What was visible was something small, trivial, almost laughable. In hindsight, he realized he had forgotten his work ID stamp. It was nearly 2 miles back. He hesitated, turned around, and started walking in the opposite direction, annoyed at the inconvenience, unaware that this minor delay would save his life while destroying everything else he would ever know. No alarms sounded. No warnings came. No voice told him to run. This is the most disturbing part of the story. The end of the world did not arrive with chaos or panic, but with normalcy intact until the final second. This is not a story about war strategy or military victory. This is a story about how easily reality collapses, how fragile ordinary life truly is, and how one human being happened to be standing in the wrong place twice when history decided to prove it. At 8:14 a.m., the sound reaches him before the meaning does. An aircraft engine, distant, steady, high above the city, ordinary enough that no one looks twice. American B-29s pass over Japanese cities almost daily now, mapping, observing, reminding. There are no sirens, no shouts, no urgency. He looks up anyway, more out of habit than fear, and notices something that doesn't fit. The plane releases an object small against the sky, drifting downward beneath 2 parachutes. It looks wrong, too slow, too deliberate. There is a moment, brief, fragile, where curiosity still exists, where the human mind tries to categorize what it's seeing using past experience. Then, at 8:15 a.m., the concept of experience itself collapses. The sky turns white. Not bright, not blinding white, absolute, as if color and shadow have been erased from existence. It feels less like light and more like reality being overwritten. Training takes over before thought can form. He drops to the ground, rolls into an irrigation ditch, forces his thumbs into his ears, clamps his hands over his eyes. A second later, the shockwave arrives. This is not an explosion in any familiar sense. It is pressure made violent, sound made physical. The force lifts him, throws him, slams him back into the earth as if gravity itself has turned hostile. Then comes the heat. At ground zero, temperatures exceed 7,000 degrees. Fahrenheit hotter than the surface of the sun. Nearly 2 miles away, the air still burns skin on contact. Fabric ignites. Flesh blisters instantly. His left side catches fire. Pain registers only briefly before his body shuts down. When consciousness returns, nothing follows the rules it used to. Morning has become night. The sky is black with smoke ash falling thick and silent, coating everything like a burial shroud. Sound is gone. His eardrums ruptured, replaced by a hollow, ringing absence. He cannot see from one eye. He cannot feel half his body without pain screaming through it. As he pulls himself from the ditch, one truth becomes clear before he even looks around. Whatever just happened was not an attack on a military target or an industrial zone or a specific location. It was an event designed to end a city all at once, and the city has already lost. When he crawls out of the irrigation ditch, the first thing he understands is not what he sees, but what is missing. Sound is gone. Not quiet gone. The city that once breathed with footsteps, engines, voices, and steel, has been muted, as if someone reached down and switched off an entire frequency of reality. His ears ring, uselessly ruptured beyond function. The sky above him is no longer blue, but choked black, thick with smoke and ash that drifts downward in slow, deliberate flakes, sticking to skin-hair rubble, turning morning into a premature dusk. He tries to stand and nearly collapses. His left side is aflame with pain. His clothes are burned into his skin. One eye sees nothing but darkness. The other opens onto a landscape that refuses to make sense. Hiroshima is no longer a city. Within a radius of more than a mile, buildings are flattened into their foundations, steel frames twisted into impossible angles, concrete cracked and peeled back as if pried open by something enormous and careless. There are no intact streets, only paths carved through debris and fire. And then there are the people, if they can still be called that. Figures move through the ruins with arms extended, not reaching out but held away from their bodies because the skin of their hands and forearms hangs loose, burned too deeply to bear contact. Faces are swollen beyond recognition. Eyes glazed, mouths open without sound. Clothing has burned away entirely, leaving raw flesh exposed to ash and heat. They walk, but they do not see. Shock has stripped them of urgency, of fear of identity. They move because some last fragment of instinct tells them to keep moving. This is not panic. Panic requires awareness. This is the aftermath of awareness being annihilated. He steps forward, disoriented, scanning for landmarks that no longer exist, for buildings he remembers that have been erased so completely they seem never to have stood at all. Everything within nearly 2 miles of the blast has been wiped clean, not damaged, not ruined, deleted. He searches for colleagues, 2 other engineers finishing the same assignment. He finds them alive, burned silent, their eyes meeting his with a shared, unspoken realization. We survived something no one should survive. They do not embrace. They do not speak. Language feels irrelevant here. As night falls, fires burn unchecked, casting an orange glow through the smoke, illuminating bodies scattered everywhere, some blackened beyond recognition, others still breathing, still begging, still dying. Screams carry through the darkness in waves, rising and falling until even they begin to fade. The next morning they try to leave. Bridges are collapsed, streets blocked by rubble and corpses, the city turned into an obstacle course of death. At the river, the stench is overwhelming. The water is clogged with bodies, some lifeless, some clinging to debris, some moving slowly, as if unsure whether they belong among the living or the dead. A fallen railroad beam spans the current. He crosses it inch by inch, refusing to look down, refusing to think about what waits beneath. On the far side, he keeps moving because stopping feels like surrender. This is no longer survival in the heroic sense. This is endurance stripped to its most primitive form. Put one ruined step in front of the other, and do not stop, because if you stop, Hiroshima will claim you like it claimed everything else. By the time he leaves Hiroshima, survival no longer feels miraculous. It feels provisional, temporary, as if the world has allowed him to keep breathing, only because it hasn't decided what to do with him yet. The journey out of the ruins is slow, disjointed, unreal, walking through miles of devastation, crossing broken infrastructure, stepping around bodies that blur into the landscape, until death becomes a background texture rather than an event. When he finally boards an evacuation train, it is packed far beyond capacity, a moving container of burned flesh, shock, and silence. People stand pressed together, wounds against wounds, the smell of smoke and infection heavy in the air. Some die standing up. Others whisper fragments of what they saw, repeating the same sentences over and over, as if saying the words enough times might make them comprehensible. He says nothing. Talking feels dangerous, like it might tear open something inside him that can no longer be closed. As the train crawls through the countryside, he watches Hiroshima recede through the window. The mushroom cloud still visible in the distance, shrinking slowly until it disappears beyond the horizon. For the first time, he allows himself to think it's over. I survived. I'm going home. That illusion lasts exactly 1 day. In Nagasaki, he reunites with his wife, who barely recognizes him beneath the burns and swelling. He tells her what happened, tries to explain the scale of destruction, the way an entire city vanished in a single moment. She listens, then shakes her head. One bomb cannot destroy a city. It sounds like trauma speaking exaggeration born from shock. Even his supervisor at work reacts the same way when he insists on reporting what he witnessed. An engineer should understand numbers, probabilities, limits. What he describes violates all of them. Then on the morning of August 9th, in the middle of that explanation, he hears it again, the same sound, unmistakable now. An aircraft engine, high altitude, steady. His blood turns cold before his mind catches up. He doesn't argue. He doesn't warn. He moves. Instinct slams him under a desk as the room fills with blinding white for the second time in 3 days. The shockwave hits windows, shattering inward walls, cracking bodies thrown like debris. This bomb is different, larger, heavier, more powerful, but geography intervenes where fate does not. Hills blunt the blast. Reinforced concrete absorbs what it can. He survives again, emerging into chaos that is horrifyingly familiar. As he looks out at another rising mushroom cloud identical in shape and color, to the first a single thought cuts through the noise, sharper than fear, heavier than disbelief. This didn't end in Hiroshima. It followed me. Survival does not arrive as relief. It arrives as a postponement. In the days after Nagasaki, the immediate chaos fades just enough for something slower and far more insidious to take its place. The burns do not heal, they deepen. Fever comes in, waves recedes, then returns stronger, as if the body is arguing with itself about whether it is allowed to continue. Hair begins to fall out in clumps. Skin peels away in places that were never touched by flame. The damage is no longer dramatic or visible to strangers. It is internal, cellular, patient. Radiation does not announce itself. It settles in quietly and waits. His wife, who was outside when the second bomb fell, cannot escape it. The black rain soaked through her clothes and into her bloodstream, invisible and irreversible. She washes, changes, cleans the house, but nothing can scrub away what has already entered her cells. Their infant son survives the blast untouched, shielded by walls and distance, yet even that protection is incomplete. Radiation does not respect shelter. It passes through concrete, through skin, through bone, embedding itself in a future that will not reveal the cost for years. The house still stands damaged, cracked, wounded, but upright, and that fact alone feels like a victory. They have shelter. They have each other. And yet safety has vanished as a concept. Days stretch into weeks, weeks into months. Hospitals fill with people who were never cut, never crushed, never burned, yet are dying all the same. Vomiting weakness, bleeding gums, infections that refuse to heal. Doctors speak carefully, uncertain, learning in real time alongside their patients. Survival becomes a full-time occupation. Every morning begins with the same question: who will be worse today? As the years pass, the war ends and the world moves forward. The consequences refuse to stay in the past. He returns to work. He rebuilds. He tries to live quietly, to focus on what remains rather than what was lost. When doctors warn him not to have more children, citing genetic damage and unacceptable risk, he listens and then chooses to live anyway. Some children are born healthy. Others grow sick easily, their bodies less resilient, their immune systems weaker. Cancer appears decades later, arriving with the calm inevitability of something that was always scheduled. This is the lie of survival, that it is a single moment, a binary outcome, a line crossed. In reality, survival is a long sentence carried out over a lifetime. It is watching the damage unfold slowly in the people you love. It is learning that the explosion was only the opening act, and that the true weapon was time. For decades, he carries the story in silence. Not because the memories fade, they never do, but because the world around him is not ready to receive them. Japan rebuilds with astonishing speed. Cities rise where ashes once settled. Factories hum. Trains run on time. Progress becomes a kind of anesthesia, dulling the collective appetite for stories that threaten stability. He returns to work, designs, ships, raises his family, and learns how to live with a body that never fully recovers. The burns heal into scars, the hearing in one ear never returns, and the flashes come uninvited in the quiet moments, white and absolute exactly as they were. For a long time, he believes survival itself is the only meaning required. But as the years pass, and illness claims his wife, then his son, he begins to understand that survival without testimony is incomplete. He outlives almost everyone who shared those mornings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The circle of witnesses collapses inward until he stands nearly alone. Only then does the purpose become clear. He did not survive twice to be admired or pitied or studied as an anomaly. He survived to speak at a moment when forgetting has become dangerous. When he finally tells the full story publicly, there is no anger in his voice, no accusation. He does not speak in the language of politics or blame. He speaks in facts, in memory and restraint. 2 cities, 3 days, 2 flashes, 1 human body caught at the center of both. The world listens differently now. Nuclear weapons have multiplied. Their power has grown exponentially. What once erased a city could now erase nations. He becomes a witness not only to what happened, but to what could happen again. When he dies, the headlines briefly note the rarity of his survival, the strangeness of his life. But the true legacy is quieter and far more urgent. His story remains as a warning embedded in history, a reminder that there are moments humanity does not get to rehearse. Next time, there may be no one left to remember, no one left to testify, no voice to describe the white light before everything disappears. This story is not just about the past. It is about how close the future already is. One ordinary morning was enough to divide human history into before and after, and the weapons that made that possible still exist, thousands of them far more powerful, waiting in silence. The lesson is not fear, but responsibility. Progress without restraint is not safety, and forgetting is not healing. Remembering is. If this story moved you, disturbed you, or made you pause, that reaction matters. Share it so others can hear the warning. Like this video so the message travels further. Subscribe to stay with us as we uncover the truths history tries to bury before they repeat themselves.